There we go. What's up, everyone? We are in this lesson today. We are going to be talking about building a balanced college list. And I'm saying that for those of you that, for whatever reason cannot read the screen. I'm just saying that because it's already up there. But I have a special friend and guest with me today. And this person is special for a lot of reasons. But as it pertains to you, I consider him an expert in his craft when it comes to admissions, applications, essay writing, school selection, helping students navigate the application process, build a balanced list, and other things, among other things. And I'll let him talk a little bit more about his credentials, who he is, where he comes from, his background, his experience, as he kind of goes through and educates you on some things that I feel that are really, really powerful and important. But this whole lesson today is really all about this is the bit of admissions that we're going to talk about as it pertains to the bottom line, the cost of college. And I know a lot of times people focus maybe on financials, or maybe only on admissions, or maybe only on academics. But true college planning and college prep definitely has to tie everything in together for a true holistic approach. So one definitely has to rely on the other, and then vice versa. In this particular lesson, we are talking about what I like to consider the secret weapon when it comes to reducing your out-of-pocket expenses for college. I've said this in many videos that I've done, whether that be on YouTube or presentations that I've done live. You can do everything right. You can do everything right. We talk about how to prepare for the FAFSA, how to maximize, your students' financial aid, how to fund college, efficiently and effectively. You can do all those things right. But I think the missing component to a very sound college plan, a successful college plan, would be not having a well-balanced list. Okay. So when it comes to scholarships, when it comes to financial aid, when it comes to need-based aid, merit aid, when it comes to graduation, your student graduating on time, when it comes to your students' experience, having a great experience, when it comes to you maximizing the return on your dollar and the return on your time as not only a parent, but also a student, it always boils back down to school selection. Okay, so there's families that I come across that have a tremendous amount of need when it comes to financial aid, and they're selecting the wrong college that their student will never have a chance of receiving merit scholarship or even need-based scholarships. And then there's families that may not need money, but they want their student to actually receive financial aid and or scholarships. And same thing, they're choosing the wrong colleges that won't meet their need or give them any kind of help, whatsoever. So regardless of what your situation is like, whether you have a lot of money to pay for college or you have, limited resources to pay for college, I think this information is going to be tremendously valuable, regardless of where you are in that process. And I won't keep going on and talking to you about it, because we definitely respect your time if you're watching this information or watching this video. But let me go ahead and introduce my good friend. You won't be able to see him, just like you probably can't see me. But if you want the opportunity to communicate or speak with Dr. Key after this particular lesson, please reach out to him. His information will be provided to you at the end of this particular lesson, as well as he will be a part of our group to answer some of the questions that you may have pertaining to this information we're going to go over with you today, as well as any general admission and application questions that you may have. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce to you Dr. Key, Dr. Keon Anderson, that is, if I wanted to say his full name, but I like to call him Dr. Key. So Dr. Key, are you with us?
I'm with you. It's great to be here today.
Awesome. Well, it's always great to have you. Always great to talk to you. And I always like to associate myself with people who I feel that are smarter than I am, especially when it comes to a lot of things and specific subjects or topics. So thank you for blessing us with your presence and your grace for this knowledge and information you're going to give us. But anyhow, I'll let you go ahead and take the floor. I'll mute myself, or I'll be quiet, but I'll definitely be taking some notes. And I encourage anyone watching this. I know some of you have the ability to record and replay, but if you do have the ability to take some notes, you may want to do that, because sometimes we remember things better when we can actually write them down and take some notes. But Dr. Key, I'll let you go ahead and shoot, and I'll go ahead and mute myself.
All right. Thank you. Hi, everybody who's watching this video. Some of you might be watching us in real time. Some of you might be watching us a week from now. I'm going to be conscious of giving y'all information so that you can understand it no matter at what point you're watching it. So again, my name is Dr. Key. That's what I go by for people who I really like. You can all call me that. Today, I'm going to be talking about building a balanced college list. But before I get into that, I think it's important to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been working in college admissions, college access for almost a decade and a half now. I've helped students get into some of the very best schools. I've helped students get into some schools that may not necessarily fall in the very best category, but they were the very best school for those specific students. So when we talk about having a balanced college list, I'm really going to provide you with some basic information to help you understand how you navigate this process specifically for you, because it is a unique process. I'm a believer that each student should have their very own unique college list. It should not necessarily be like, hey, we're all best friends. We're going to apply to the same schools because we've known each other forever. It really should come down to ensuring that you have a school selection that's really representative of the things that matter to you. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So if we think about higher ed options in the US, there are over 3,700 colleges and universities throughout the US. I'd like to make sure that I bring up that number because oftentimes when we're thinking about colleges, we're really thinking about the limited ones that have name recognition or that have high ranking. But we may not necessarily be thinking about all of the other schools that could be a better potential fit for you and your student. So you're probably being asked this question whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, a senior, and applying for college right now, but where do you want to go to college? Whenever I ask students these questions, unfortunately, I oftentimes get the very same response in terms of the common schools that students want to go to. I was meeting with a group of students last night, and a number of them are like, I want to go to this school. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because I know the name of it. And I'm like, have you been there? Does it offer your major? Is it a good fit for you? They're unable to answer those additional questions. But oftentimes when I'm asking students, some popular schools that I get, students are like, I want to go to MIT. I want to go to Stanford. I want to go to Harvard, Yale, UCLA, USC, UPenn, Dartmouth. So students are really sort of thinking of these schools because they have high name recognition and high ranking. Whenever I'm talking to families, I really like to be pointed and noting that high ranking does not translate to the best experience for your students. In fact, when we think about the measurements for ranking, student experience oftentimes is not included as a factor of what makes that school a great school. It's typically things like research or endowment or other things along that line, but not necessarily that MIT or USC or Dartmouth or Yale is actually the best fit for a particular student. So oftentimes, you know the names of these schools because they're high ranking and they have name recognition. The other thing that I like to point out about this list is that a lot of these high ranking schools are also name recognizable because they have a football team. So if you are not a student who's necessarily interested in football or that's the path that you want to go, these schools also may not necessarily be the best schools for you. So a common mistake that I see throughout this process is that students are looking only, again, at ranking and name recognition. They're not looking to figure out whether or not the school is going to be a best fit for them. If you look at your list and you're looking at a particular school on your list and you don't have a specific reason you would want to attend that school other than it's top ranked, it may not be the best school for you. If you can't tell me why you want to go to a school or what specifically they would offer you, it may not be the best deal. Whenever I'm talking to my students, I always sort of make the comparisons of developing a college list like, dating. So when you're going through the process of dating, you're figuring out, well, what do I want? I want someone who's going to talk to me nicely. I want someone who's going to take me out. I want someone who's going to do X, Y, and Z. When you're thinking about college admissions, it also needs to make sense. I've had a number of students who say things like, I want to go to Harvard or USC or UCLA to major in cosmetology or to become a chef. And I'm like, well, those are not the best schools for that because they don't offer trade certifications. So really making sure that it offers what's necessary for your student and it's going to give them the best experience. So these are some things that you should consider. We want to consider academic programs. If they don't have your academic program at that particular school, that should be a big deterrent about whether or not you want to go there. We're looking at whether or not they're going to offer great programs for preparation for grad school. Some degrees and majors that you're going to go into, you're going to have to go to grad school. So you want to go to a school that's sort of representative of that. If you're really interested in becoming a doctor, you're going to need to go to a school that's going to help you become a doctor. Also considering things like school size, the cost, reputation, location is a big factor. A lot of my seniors that I work with really, really want to get away from their parents when it's in September. So, like, we're in late September right now, and I'm talking to them, they're like, I just want to get away. And then we get time to May 1st when they have to make their official decisions, and they're like, I don't want to go far away. I want to be able to get home. So, noting those sorts of things and really being honest with yourself along the process. Maybe you're looking for Greek life. Maybe you're looking for internship opportunities. You're concerned about culture, clubs, diversity. You definitely should be looking at acceptance rates in terms of the schools that you're going to be going to. An example that I give, because I'm based in SoCal, is that a number of my students want to go to schools like UCLA. They get over 100,000 applications. Their acceptance rate, I believe, last year was less than 12%. So what we know is that means that 88,000 students by default are not going to be admitted there. If you're only applying to schools with really high acceptance rates, you're really limiting the schools that you would actually be accepted to. Pure numbers. All right. So everything on that last slide that I just showed you in terms of factors for you to consider, you can go to a website like Big Future and you could actually filter out all of those different indicators and be able to get a general list of schools. I believe that that is honestly just sort of a start. So you generate this list of schools and you do research from there. So you're starting really broad and really general. Now, when you're thinking about this, and this is just sort of a pro tip, we're thinking about sort of admissions approaches for how we analyze or how we look. So I'm going to read from the bottom of the slide and go up. The least selective universities only want your academic information. So as you're thinking about all of those schools that you can generate utilizing some generator, you can look and see what are they going to ask for. If they're only going to ask for my academic information, then okay, cool. I could apply to those schools relatively quickly. Now, as we increase in selectivity, so schools that are, selected state schools and universities, they might also ask for additional information. So they may be fairly holistic in terms of, I need you to tell me a little bit more about yourself, tell me about your leadership, tell me about what you do in your spare time. Maybe they'll have you write a statement. As we're looking at sort of private and highly selective colleges, they're going to do a complete holistic review. Simply what that means is that they're trying to figure out if you're the best fit for their campus. So I noted a couple slides ago, like that when you think about college admissions, it's like dating. This works both ways. You're trying to figure out whether or not these colleges are a good fit for you. And the colleges are in return trying to figure out if you were a good fit for them. As you think about like sort of the base of a great or a strong college list, you should have sort of schools that fall into 4 different categories. I'm not going to read all the information on this chart because you can see it or you can pause the video, but I'm just going to sort of walk through the general idea behind each of them. So you should have safety schools. Safety schools are schools where you are above the admit requirements. So pretty certainly that like you're a shoe-in for that type of school. They're typically only looking at your academic profile. Your target schools, you should be below or above sort of the average admits. So again, they may be asking for a little more information. So they may ask for you to provide extracurriculars. As you're going for your REACH schools, you may not necessarily be above the threshold in terms of their average admit. They're going to ask you for more information. This is sort of a pro tip that I have learned over the years. If you are applying to REACH and Super REACH schools, you need to make sure that you're presenting information in ways that actually is the best sell for you. I've had the privilege of reading for admissions for top schools here in my state, and also being trained by admissions officers in a couple of other states. And one of the areas where students really need guidance is being able to present those extracurriculars and those personal statements in ways which really add value to their application. So if you are on the lower side, but you're applying for a reach or a super reach, you need to make sure that your profile actually reads stronger. Now, I'll tell you, as someone who's read admissions, when you go in and you say, well, I have a 4.4 on a 4.0 scale, and that should speak for itself. Unfortunately, when we're talking about reach and super reach, a 4.4 could be pretty average. So if you have nothing else to offer outside of the fact that you have a 4.4, you may not be able to gain admissions into those schools. As you're thinking about developing your list, you want to make sure that you have schools sort of ranging in these categories. So safety schools, you have 1 to 2 safety schools because you know you're sort of a shoe in there. You may have anywhere between 3 to 8 target schools. You may have, 2 to 4 reach schools, and then a couple of super reach schools. Now, what you do not want to do is have all of your schools fall in the reach, super reach category. So if we sort of think back to that first list that I showed you, all of those schools that we sort of know by name recognition or that are high ranking typically fall in the reach, super reach category. So whenever I'm looking at a list for students, I'm like, hey, this is not balanced because you're putting yourself in a position where your odds at getting in are automatically decreased. And this is for students who are like really great academically, really great in extracurriculars, really strong, and also for students who are sort of average. On both ends of the spectrum, in terms of the type of student that you can be, you don't only want to have reach and super reach schools on your list. So I've given you an example of sort of a balanced and unbalanced list. Now, if you look at the column on your left-hand side, you'll see that we have Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, Yale, MIT, UPenn, Duke, Brown. Note that they all are reporting having less than 10% admit rates. So that means of all the students who apply of fall 2020, they've accepted less than 10%. So that means that 90% of students who apply to these schools didn't get in. Now, a more balanced list would be sort of the list that you see on your right-hand side. So yeah, we have Stanford and we have Harvard on this list, but we also have Smith. They have an admit rate of 32%. We have Ohio State University, 53.7%. We have Wisconsin-Madison, 54.4%. Going down to the bottom of the list, we have ASU at 86%. We have the University of Mexico at 94%. Now I'm going to give y'all another piece of advice, right? I happen to personally know that the University of Mexico is really good at giving out merit-based aid. So they're looking out for the students who are going to attend that school. I happen to know that the University of SoCa at 40% admit rate is going to also sort of be offering students opportunities to travel abroad, and they're including those costs in their regular admissions while offering them things like laptops so that they could actually be able to do their schoolwork. Now, the additional thing that I'm going to note is that a couple of these schools on this balanced list you may not be familiar with. Like, you probably have never heard of SoCa. I hadn't heard of SoCa until I was doing a deep dive trying to help students be able to gain admission into schools that were really going to service their specific needs. Maybe you haven't heard of Smith College. So some of these schools, as you're going through and you're doing your research, may not be schools that you have heard of. Now, what I know is that some of these schools offer really awesome opportunities for students to be able to explore their interests, to be able to explore their major, to be able to connect them with internships and other opportunities because they're not competing with the same students that are going to some of these schools that have lower admit rates. So even if you are on one of these campuses to the left, it doesn't automatically add up to you having direct connections with all of these great experiences, which is sort of a misnomer. People sort of assume if I go to this school, this is going to be the outcome. If you go to that school, you're competing with everyone who goes to that school for those same opportunities, and those opportunities could be limited. If you go to another school, it may not be as competitive of an environment for you to gain the tactical skills you're going to need to go into your career. So you want to make sure that you're considering schools that definitely maybe are high ranking, but also schools that are not so high ranking, but with great opportunities attached to them because you're not competing with as many schools. Say, for instance, if you end up at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, they may have an awesome biology program and 50% of their students end up in internship placements. Now, that's just a made up example, so don't take me verbatim and quote me there. But just an example where that may not be a school that you would necessarily think that you want to go to, but they may offer a better opportunity for you than, say, another school. So back to the question that we started when we think about what college you want to go to. You may not know the name of the college that makes the most sense for you right now today, and that's okay. You don't have to know the name of it today because you can go do research. I've already given you one tool where you can sort of start. I really like the way the Big Future sets it up personally because it allows you to be able to select some schools and then do some further research. Now, a simple review and things that I know based on my almost decade and a half of experience working in college access and admissions. We can want to go to school for a number of reasons. But when it really comes down to it, these four categories I have found to be the most important of all of the categories. Academic program. If a school that you're interested in doesn't offer the academic program that you're interested in, it should not be on your list. It's very simple. Acceptance rates need to be considered when you're creating a balanced list. If you're only creating a college list of schools that are less than 10%, you're really backing yourself in a corner. Then from there, you want to make sure that you consider the aid that is offered. Some school offers aid for families, no matter where their income is, because they may just have the ability to offer more merit-based aid. For some students, it is going to make a major difference whether or not they're going to get any aid associated with those schools. So families have to be honest. Am I willing to pay X amount of dollars in order for my kid to be able to go to this school? Would it be better for my school to go to a school that's gonna my student to go to a school that's gonna offer more aid opportunities? And then at the end, looking at the overall experiences of past students, noting that ranking and name recognition don't necessarily speak to those things. So really sort of finding out, how do people feel about being on this campus? What does this campus offer in terms of support, in terms of the ability to ensure that my student is gonna make it to graduation? Because ultimately, the goal of going to college is to make sure that you make it through college so that you can begin living the rest of your life. So, action step. I know that building a college list comes with a lot. I was just on the phone with a mom just yesterday. Me and Josh were on the phone with a mom, and they've done the beginning part of this, where they have done all the research and they have all of these schools, but they kind of need some help to sort of define this list down a little more and make sure that it makes sense for their specific student. Now, whether it be us or whether it be someone else, seek guidance and seek guidance that's going to ensure that your specific needs are going to get met.
Yeah, that
Before I
that
go to the last slide, do you have anything to add?
yeah, well, first of all, good stuff. Great information, great value. Do this, don't do that, and that's kind of what we want to deliver in a lot of these lessons. And they're meant to be somewhat short, but informative. Also, they're meant to be for those of you watching as parents, and you may want to have your student watch this particular lesson, but they're also meant to create some questions that you didn't know you had. The more you learn when you go through this process, especially if this is your first time or maybe your first time going around, it didn't go so well, and this is now where you want to do things better. Maybe your first student didn't get the money that you were hoping for. Maybe you spent way too much and you can't go through that again. So whatever your situation is like, hopefully this is planting some seeds where your brain starts to kind of put things together, and maybe you have some new questions or new thought process perspective on some things that you want to get done. And seeking guidance is definitely always the best thing to do, whether that be here, whether you post a comment or a question here, or you reach out to us in a Facebook group, or you reach out to me directly. But either way, please get your questions answered. Also, if you post your question in the group, it allows us to answer that question so other people in the group can learn from the question that you have, because I guarantee you're not the only one that may have that question. But if your situation is going to be somewhat unique and you have a one-off question about your student situation, then please, we can keep that definitely private and confidential. But most importantly, get your questions answered, because you have the ability and the opportunity to do so. A couple of things that I want to mention and just echo that Dr. Key already mentioned in some of the slides. And you talked a little earlier about what makes a college great or special, or like a Harvard or a Princeton. And I like to add to that something that I read, and you can either confirm this, Dr. Key, or you can kind of reject it. But what I've heard before, what I've read, is that what makes a college elite is not necessarily the curriculum, or the courses that a specific university may provide. But sometimes what makes a college elite is the type of student that it attracts. So, for example, if your student goes to Harvard or Princeton, a lot of times Harvard and Princeton are getting students that may be, the child of a politician. Maybe their son is a student where the parents are a CEO or a high-ranking officer in a specific company. Well, they're attracting elite students from elite families, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the college, it's almost like a model going to a model agency where the model was already somewhat, beautiful. And then they went through an agency for marketing and growth, but they didn't necessarily go to the agency to become beautiful. So sometimes your student already possesses some of the key elements of what they need to possess to be great in life. The university doesn't necessarily, although the university may have a high ranking, may have a great, brand recognition, doesn't necessarily make the university elite compared to another university that's a better fit for your student. And then also, I like to emphasize that you have power. I know Dr. Key was mentioning, what's important to your student, what's a great fit for your student. That it's so important to really understand that in this process, you are the customer. On one side of the equation, when it comes to the university, you are the customer. There are things that need to be addressed and acknowledged that are important to you and your family, your student, obviously, as well as you as a parent and your family, because this is a family decision, not just the student's decision. And I always try to get the families that I work with to understand that if you have a balanced list, it can keep you and your student in the driver's seat. It can put you in a situation where you have a little bit more leverage and power to negotiate, to get what you're looking for based on what's important to you and your student. So you do have power. And I encourage you all to keep that in mind and remember that as you go through this process. And what's also important, you're the customer on one end of the equation, but you're also the product, or I would say the product or the service provider on the other end of the equation. What I mean by that is your student is offering themselves as a product that is going to enhance a specific campus's life or student body life, and they're going to make that college better. That college is going to invest into that student by making them an offer and accepting that specific student. So it's really important to understand what's important to that college, who is your audience as a parent or as a student. What are they looking for? What are some of the things that are important to them? And how could I position myself, my beliefs, my philosophy to be in alignment with the quote unquote customer that is the college that you're looking to find a match for or match with. So, and to know some of those things, this goes back to this action step, the seek guidance, get an understanding of what a college may be looking for, get an understanding of colleges that you may not have considered, that they're not on your radar, that you can definitely start to add to your list and start doing a little bit more research and understanding. And this is where you're taking action, getting help, getting guidance from people who have gone through the process, who've taken many other people through the process, and who have the information, the know-how, and some many pro tips, I'll say, that you just wouldn't be able to get on your own. So one of the biggest mistakes that most parents and families make when planning for college is that they do things on their own. Okay, so much you can do on your own, and there's a lot of things that you probably should get some guidance for. Your list is going to be your secret weapon, but do not go at it alone. Seek some guidance. That's all I have. I know there's kind of a mouthful, but I just wanted to emphasize some of the things that you mentioned. When you're looking for a car, sometimes we want to take our students to BMW or Mercedes, where they probably should have a Honda or a Toyota. And it's really important that you don't, just be so fixated on a brand of a car if it's not necessarily going to be safer. It's not necessarily going to be more fuel efficient. It's not going to, you want to find the right fit for your student. And, brand recognition is important, but it may not be as important as you think. And we just want to make sure you have the right information as you go throughout the process. So that's all I have to add. But Dr. Key, I'll let you close this out and I'll throw it back to you.
All right, thank you. I just want to echo some of the sentiments you made. There's definitely a reciprocal relationship when you're thinking about your college list and you're thinking about the experience. And the student benefits from the university, but the university also benefits from the student. So recognizing the power and autonomy that you have in order to create a balance list, and then also making sure that you're going to get your needs met is definitely bottom line as you're navigating this process. I'll sort of leave it there. I provided you with our contact information if you would like to reach out to myself or if you would like to reach out to Josh. We're here to answer your questions. Ultimately, we care that your questions get answered.
You got it. And we'll make this information also available in the description, so you can reach out to us. Say hello to Dr. Key in the group when you get a chance after you watch this lesson. Just make him feel good that you're getting some value out of his expertise and the content that he's providing. So please give him a shout out. But thank you all for checking this lesson out. Thank you for being a part of this program. And if you have any questions, as I always say, you need more clarity, clarification, whatever that might be, seek guidance, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. Hopefully that is that's a wrap and all is well. Everyone have a great rest of your day, and we will speak to you all on the next lesson.